Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and for my card today I am participating in the Autism Awareness blog hop that has been going on all day today, and I've redone the voiceover for this because I am late with mine. I had it marked down for tomorrow. I don't know how I got my days mixed up, but anywho. I am starting with some Bristol smooth cardstock here, and I just have my craft mat on my work surface. And then I am sponging on 3 different shades of blue Distress Oxide ink onto this cardstock, working my way from lightest to darkest and not putting in a whole ton of effort because with Bristol smooth cardstock and the Distress Oxide inks, they kind of like just glide on this cardstock. I absolutely love it. So when I get to the bottom here, when I'm going to start adding the Salty Ocean Distress Oxide inks, I'm going to grab a Post-it note just so that I don't have to hold the cardstock with my fingers, because especially on Bristol smooth cardstock, fingerprints will smear the ink and it'll actually show up. So I like to use, either a scrap piece of paper, Post-it note, just something to, keep my fingers from touching that actual inked surface. So once I've got the colors blended onto my cardstock, I'm going to start layering different stencils to create a background. And I'm pretty much experimenting here. I had a rough idea in my head what I wanted to do, but I had no idea whether or not it was going to work. So I'm using these kind of ray sort of stencils from the Ocean Scene Builder stencil pack from Honeybee Stamps. And I am taping them into place with this purple tape that everyone has been raving about. So far, I'm quite liking it the more I use it. So I've just taped it in place just on the 3 sides with that tape. And then I decided to use just clean water. So I have another blending foam here that has nothing on it but the water. And then I'm just dragging it across the stencil. And because Distress Oxide inks react with water, I end up with this really interesting sort of a look. I don't want it to be perfect because I'm going to layer another couple stencils on top of this. It's more just to get the impression of these rays. So this obviously is going to pick up some of this ink. So I'm kind of wiping some of the ink off the blending foam with a baby wipe, and then I'm adding a little bit more water and then dragging it on the stencil again to get more of the effect. And once I was kind of happy with how that looked, I'm going to just heat it or dry it with my heat tool. You can let it air dry if you want or whatever, but I just wanted to heat it with my heat tool so I could move on to the next stencil. So I'm using the narrower ray stencil from that same pack, and I'm using that same tape. You can wipe this tape down and reuse it over and over again, which that's one of the things I'm really liking about it. So I'm not wasting any tape making this. I just keep reusing the tape over and over again. So for my first attempt with this one, I'm smushing some white pigment ink onto my craft mat because I didn't want to take the risk of picking up any of the Distress Oxide inks and contaminating my white ink pad. So I smushed it onto the craft mat and then I'm picking it up from there. And I'm kind of smushing it onto the stencil here. And I was finding that while this works and you get kind of a light effect, it isn't much different than what I did with the other stencil and the water. And I wanted it to be more white and more noticeable. Like when I peeled up my stencil here, I was like, you can't really tell that I really did anything. So I ended up pulling out some white gouache here. And for those not familiar with gouache, it's kind of a cross between acrylic paint and watercolor. So it's very white, very pigmented, and I just put some on my craft mat, and then I've got another just plain blending foam here, and I added a little bit of water. So my foam is a bit wet, and then I'm just picking up that gouache and then painting it over my stencil, just how I would use any sort of ink or anything like that. And this gave me more of the effect that I was looking for, so that these narrower rays would show up. So it's not super saturated. It does look like it the way it's going onto the tape, but it's not super saturated. And then you can see I get that fun effect. This would look really cool if you did it with just over different colors, different types of stencils, etc. So I was happy with how this looked. So I just, again, quickly dried it with my heat tool, wiped off my stencil, wiped off the tape. And then I'm going to set this tape aside so I can reuse it one last time with my remaining stencil. So my background is dry. And now I'm going to use this Falling Heart stencil from the Fall Showers pack from Honeybee. And I'm going to line that up and then use those pieces of tape again to tape them into place. And then once these are in place, I'm going to use some Nuvo Glimmer paste here. This is Sapphire Blue Glimmer paste. So I picked this up from my palette knife, and I'm going to scrape this over the entire stencil so that it fills in all of these little hearts. And because this is glitter paste, as soon as I'm done using this, I wipe down everything and I wash my stencil immediately with soapy water. Glitter paste, it just likes to, it dries almost like a rock onto stencils and tools and whatnot. So I clean it up immediately. I do not wait. I do not let it sit and dry. My background I'll let it sit and dry, but everything else I clean up as quickly as possible. So I wipe up my craft mat here. I washed my stencil in the sink and it's good to go. So now while my background is drying, I've got another piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock here, and I have the Honeybee Forest Friend stamp set. I use my anti-static powder tool on my cardstock, and then I'm stamping this stamp with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and then I'm going to heat emboss this with Nuvo's clear embossing powder. So I could just leave this if I wanted to color it just like I'm going to, but I like adding the clear embossing powder because it gives it that raised edge, and when I want to do any sort of watercoloring, having those raised edges just means that I don't have to worry so much about one section bleeding into the next section. I don't have to be as careful. I can go a little bit quicker and not worry too much about things smearing and going anywhere because I'll have those little bit of raised edges from the heat embossing. So after everything's heat embossed, I'm going to use my Tombow markers here. I haven't used these in a while, but very, very simple. I'm sorry I didn't keep track of the specific colors I used. I just was grabbing markers at random. Whatever kind of appealed to me for each little character. And all I'm doing with the marker is just scribbling it down onto the paper and then pulling it out with my water brush and keeping it at that. I didn't bother blending colors or doing anything fancy. I just wanted to get the color down and get these little characters colored in. So I'm just going to keep going along, and I work one section at a time, like one character at a time, but then one section within each character. I don't like filling in every single area I'm going to color with when I'm using markers, just because I don't want to have the risk of the marker possibly drying too much into the cardstock. I've had people ask me that sometimes. It's like, I have so much trouble, the color doesn't want to blend, I can't get the markers to move. A lot of times that's one of the reasons. If it sits for too long and it dries for too long, I'll notice trouble trying to pull it out. So that's why I usually do one small section at a time and then pull my colors out that way. I don't do the entire image or the entire background or whatever it is I'm working on with the markers. I just do one little bit at a time. That way the marker is still wet after applying it onto either my cardstock or my watercolor paper, whatever. And then I can pull it out and reactivate it really quickly with my water brush. So after I colored in all the little characters, I added a little bit of pink for their cheeks and the insides of their ears, and then filled in this bear's nose and his paws with a really, really dark gray. And then once I've got everything colored in, I'm happy with it and it's dry, I die cut it with the coordinating die. And then I also ran some very light blue, this is Simon Says Stamps Sea Glass cardstock, and I ran it through my little Xyron sticker maker here to put adhesive all across the back of it. And I'm going to die cut this 3 times with the Kindness wafer die from Honeybee Stamps. So I figured I could get 3 die cuts out of this to make it, you know, that's just my way of stacking sentiments. I usually like to do 3. So after running these through my Gemini Junior machine, I now have all of these die cuts with adhesive on the back of them, so that all I have to do is peel off the backing and stack them together, making it just a lot quicker and easier than using liquid adhesive. This just makes it all go and come together just a lot faster. Especially with this one, because it's you can spell the word kindness, or you can spell kind, or just kindest. You've got those options with this Honeybee set, so of course I wanted to use the word kindness. So I have the 2 separate pieces to build this word, as well as the dot for the I. And then off camera, I had stamped and embossed the thank you for your onto more Bristol Smooth cardstock, and that's from the Forest Friend set. And I just left off the word kindness from that because I wanted to use the die cut. And then now my background's completely dry. That glitter paste is dry. And I'm going to adhere my little main characters here. And I was using Simon Says Stamps Craft Tacky Glue. I like using a liquid adhesive, especially a tacky one, when I'm adhering anything over glitter paste or any sort of glitter type of a surface, because it's got all that texture to it that a lot of adhesives sometimes will have trouble fully adhering. So I find this tacky adhesive works really well for that. So I put the kind die cut in place, but I hadn't pressed it down yet, so I can insert the rest of that stamped sentiment there. So now it'll say thank you for your kindness. And then I can peel the backing off the second portion of this stamp and just adhere it right over my little characters here, and then press that into place once I've got it lined up how I want it. And then same with the dot to the eye after I trim off that little bit of the stamp sentiment. And then I just use my little craft pick to peel off the backing to this eye and then to get it into place onto my card front. So now that I've got that all done, I can finish my card base, which is heavyweight white cardstock that I cut to 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and then I scored it at 5 1/2. So this will be a top folding A2 size card. And I inked up this main image again, this time with the Broken China Distress Oxide ink, and stamped that on the inside of my card. And I just pulled out all the little hearts from that same stamp set, and I'm just stamping them with the 2 darker blue shades of Distress Oxide inks. I thought they were cute, so I wanted to stamp them on the inside of the card as well. And once these are dry, you can write over this with a ballpoint pen, no problem. So I've got everything stamped, and then I want to add this final sentiment that's in the Forest Friends stamp set. So I'm going to ink up this sentiment with that VersaFine Onyx Black ink and end up stamping it on the bottom of the inside of the card. And it says, "No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted." So I stamp that onto the inside of the card, and then I'm going to use my Xyron Mega Runner on the back of my card front here so I can adhere this to my card front. And once that is adhered, that finishes off my card. So I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I'll have links to all the supplies used. I'll link to the Honeybee blog because there are tons. Honeybee isn't the only one. There are tons of people participating in this blog hop today. So much inspiration. It's such a great cause to bring awareness to. So I will have links to that in my blog post. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.